The broadcast is live. Here we are again for another week talking comics, and we were talking backup stories.
Yes, indeed. It's always good to have a backup plan.
Yeah. I don't know how I'd feel about them if I were like a Batman fan, buying Batman every month, and they were raising the price for backup stories. I might be a little upset.
Mm-hmm.
But if they put out a new Batman book with backup stories, I think I'd be less upset.
Yeah.
Because you could choose to buy that one or not.
Yeah, the way I see it, the problem is that magazines in the United States are expensive generally, and comics are even more expensive, even in magazine format. The price per page point terrible.
Right.
And if you raise the pages from 32 to 48, and you only add a 10-page backup story, it's never going to be a good proposition. Just the fact that the other story is shorter, and then it might not be a character that the regular readers like, or a creative team that the regular readers also don't like. It's
Marvel and DC stories are actually only 20 pages.
Yep.
They're 32-page comics, but there's 12 pages of ads in them. So when you buy the latest issue of Batman, you only get there's Daisy. She's here. Let me add her to the stream. Well, I thought she was here. We have no camera on.
She looks like
there she is.
My camera was on.
Yeah, it just must have defaulted to not being on.
It did.
That happens some. We're talking backup stories right now because
talking what stories?
Backup stories because DC right now is changing their page count and their price point on a lot of their regular books.
Really?
And going from $4 to $5 a month, and adding like well, I don't think they're actually going to $6. I think they floated that, and now they say they're not, but who knows?
Right.
And a lot of people don't want to pay an extra $1 for backup stories.
A lot of people an extra $1 for in general. I mean, my God, it's I just remember doing the covers to the comics, and it was like when it was $1.25 to $1.75 per book, and then like the fancy ones were $3, and it's so weird to me that a book is $5 now. But
they're just so much more expensive.
One other thing I'd also noticed too, if you look at advertising and floppy comics these days, it's 99% house ads. You really don't see outside advertisers anymore.
Yeah.
Marvel and DC, I mean, Marvel and DC still have some, mainly on the covers and on the inner covers.
But the ratio is not what it used to be.
Yeah. But that's general for print.
Yeah. But you think someone would want to advertise? I guess when they see the numbers, you would think someone would want to advertise in Spider-Man or Batman.
I think
when they see the numbers of people they reach.
Yeah.
They might not want to.
Yeah, but I bet you anything that all the execs are sitting around going, no, you know what? You want to do the online stuff. Don't invest in print. Print is dead.
Yeah. Probably a lot of that going on, too. Backup stories. Yeah, a lot of that's good. But you know what it is? I think that also a lot of people are prisoners of their collecting in terms of if you have, a 300 issue run of Batman, you don't want to stop.
Right.
And so they're going to give you a backup story. And it's like you don't even want you. It's like you feel you have no choice but to buy it. I think that, like I said, if they made new comics, if they put a new Batman series out that had backup stories, I think people would be less hostile to it.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But you always need a main story, which is what the Disney guys do in Italy. They always have a main 30-page story, and then the rest are short stories in a... Well, not exactly the rest. There's also another big story inside, but they have a main story, then they have short stories, then they have another main story, and then in the end they have a 200-page magazine, and it only costs $4. But that's in Italy.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's 100,000 copies a week. At least the latest numbers they gave me, that was 5 years ago, so I don't know how it is now. But 5 years ago, they were selling 100,000 copies a week in a country of 60 million.
That's really impressive in today's market.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be better than anything in the United States.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, we've been doing. Actually, the Harper just got a new division of graphic novel. We've been publishing graphic novels, and that's been doing surprisingly well as well. But it's not, obviously, it's not the same licensed stuff.
Yes, the young adult graphic novels have been the gold rush for the last 5 years at least.
Mm-hmm. Some of those have actually been some of the best-selling books in the entire country.
Yeah.
The young adult stuff is really good. They also have been doing well with a lot of manga stuff.
Oh yeah. As I was saying on another channel recently, manga is also cheap foreign labor in a way too, because they've already made their money in their own country and plenty of it. So it's like it's kind of easy to package because all you have to do is package it, translate it, and package it. Mm-hmm. And put it out, and you can tell that's what they're doing because everything looks exact. It's all well packaged in all that manga stuff, and everything looks exactly the same. But when you've already got the same trade dress, the same, and people like that, they can tell what's going on. But when you've already got 1,000 pages of material in the can, it's a lot easier.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. You just have to You have to reverse all the pages. You have to do it backwards.
Yeah.
One thing, but I'm not sure because I don't really buy. I have like 2 mangas only, but continuing series sell better in the United States than one shots, right?
Yeah. At least according to whenever they'll like when you go into a bookstore, you'll see whole racks of series. You'll see, 12 volumes of, I don't know, One Piece or whatever's popular now.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just the area that I live in, which is a smaller market. But I notice, like when I go in Barnes and Noble, just the sheer amount of manga they have, they're not going to be able to sell half of that at most.
Right.
And I just wonder why. I guess because it's, but I always wonder why you have such a large volume of that in an area that it's not going to sell.
Although, well, if it's young adult stuff, we do a lot of the manga stuff is connected to streaming, like streaming shows, and to books that have already been published. So, like, some of the best-selling manga books are about this. It's the survivors books it's about a bunch of cats. I don't really know because I've never actually delved into it, but it's a bunch of like sentient cats that are running around doing things, and it's a whole book series. And another one that is popular MMOs. Not sure what it is, but that was like a thing, like an online show, as far as I know. Spencer's dying to pitch in on this, but it's like the best-selling stuff. It sells a lot of stuff when it's based on something
That's another thing manga has. They almost always come with TV shows to this country.
Mm-hmm. And the Japanese insist on having the comic, the TV show, and the video game follow the main story closely, as well as how the characters look and act.
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly the opposite of what they do in Hollywood, where they go, well, now I'm the director and this is my vision, and my vision is that this character is not a character. Is a dog.
Right. I always hear people complain. Yeah, I always hear people complain that, it's like, the hit movie's out and there's not a comic that resembles it. It was like, well, that's because the hit movies don't respect the comics at all. I mean, not how much is
the song came out 25 years ago.
What was that?
That too.
The comic that IP was based on came out 25 years ago.
Yeah. There's that also.
That's not a problem for French comics because if you adapt the Blueberry, for example, the original novels are still available for purchase.
Yeah. Has there ever been either a movie or a TV series adaptation of any of the Blueberry material?
There's a U.S. Blueberry movie, although it was directed by
oh wow, I got it
by Luc Besson.
Okay,
not very good. I think Besson was high on the wrong kind of mushrooms that week, and the plot's terrible. It's not directly based on any of the graphic novels.
So it's kind of an amalgamation of everything.
Yeah, it's not an amalgamation. Let's get everything that every Blueberry book has in common. Now let's take it out. Now the character's called Blueberry, and he's a cowboy in the Old West, and mushrooms.
Gotcha. So it's more name brand recognition than anything else.
Yeah. I think Del Blanc-Sec is closer.
Oh, that movie was great. I like that movie a lot.
Have we all seen Kong versus Godzilla, by the way?
No.
Okay.
I saw it.
I went to the movies for the last time 2 years ago, and before that, 5 years.
Gotcha. Well, we saw it streaming here the other night, but we're not going to.
Yeah, we avoid movie and TV show talk here, though, because we like to talk about comics.
Okay, that's what I figured. I was just curious.
Just that every comic show I watch, it's like more than half, 3/4 of them do nothing but talk about TV show and movies. I'm like, what about the comics?
Yeah, they present themselves as, we are a comic book YouTube show. Let's talk about the movies that are based on the comics and not the comics.
I wonder if Dark Horse still has the rights to. No, they don't. I think IDW has the Godzilla comics rights now.
Oh yeah, IDW's had because James Stokoe did that one that I liked. That's where I first saw James Stokoe's work. Godzilla, the 100-Year War, the 50-year war, the 40-year war. I can't remember how many years the war was.
Right. I always like anytime Art Adams did a Godzilla comic, it was pretty decent.
Art Adams can do just about everything pretty well.
I wish he would get back to Mickey Man and O'Brien. That's not going to happen.
The Art Adams should do the Kong versus Godzilla movie adaptation just because of the way he draws apes.
He's really good at it.
Ape does not kill ape.
Lizard don't care. He'll kill anything.
Exactly. Lizard will eat your baby.
Ooh, sequel. Kong versus Godzilla versus enlarged James T. Kirk.
Versus what?
Enlarged James T. Kirk?
James T. Kirk. With his double axe handle.
He's already fought more than once. I mean, it'd be the same thing pretty much.
The first comic I got this week is almost over. There's only a 4-issue miniseries, Dead End Kids. Pretty boring cover.
Shouldn't they change the title to Dead End Series?
Yeah, wasn't the title a giveaway?
And there's actually, pardon me, it's Dead End Kids, the Suburban Job, because there's actually another Dead End Kids series. It's just, I guess you'd call it a slice of life story, but it's about these 3 kids who I guess they're dead end kids because they're living in this town with no future, and they find a bag full of money.
How much?
Of course, when you find a bag full of money, nothing good comes to you. And then they find out it's this drug dealer's money.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. And they're trying to figure, and the drug, I like the drug dealer's plan to find out who stole his money is to call in all of his customers, and he does a little loan sharking too, and just beat them up until someone tells them where the money is. So this one guy got beat up who found the money but didn't tell them. So now their plan this issue was to break into the drug dealer's place and return the money without him knowing who returned it. Of course, that doesn't go well either. It's a solid middle of the road comic. I like the art in it.
Gotcha.
But I'm a fan of slice of life, even though this one really isn't quite slice of life because there's drug dealers and a huge bag of money going on.
What was the one you got recently that looked like that was very Mobius-esque?
Oh, that's Rain Like Hammers.
Mm.
Yeah,
By Brandon Grant.
Logo.
Which I just found out is going 5 issues. We were just discussing this before we were on air. I've got a comic shop news here, and this is one of the comic shop news that just has like little things. It's got titles and order numbers in it mostly. Some are like that, where you call up your comic shop and say, "I want this one. Give me the order number." But one of the good things about it is it actually tells you when something is a miniseries. Because a lot of times I had no idea. I assumed Rain Like Hammers was supposed to be a miniseries because everything Brandon Graham does is a miniseries. And looking through this, I saw Rain Like Hammers, issue 4 of 5. I'm like, oh, good. Now I know how many issues it's going. But they're doing I guess this is a Shaolin Cowboy Shemp Buffet.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's new or a collected one. Or a new
that's... I'm not 100%.
I think it's a new printing.
It may be. The Jeff Darrow stuff is kind of hard to keep up with because it's so intermittent.
Yeah, yeah. And they put new printings of stuff out every now and then. Mm-hmm. But here's the Captain America buddy comic. This is the one where he goes around looking for his shield with his 3 Captain America buddies. What was the first comic to do that? Green Lantern?
Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Traveling story. I don't know.
Because that was the first one I can think of.
In terms of like a buddy comic, so to speak?
Yeah, do like a superhero going out on a journey or whatever to see America.
Might be.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's that's the late '60s Green Lantern, Green Arrow by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, famous late '60s DC comic. Oh yeah, that's Here's one that
yeah.
What was that?
1010 went out and discovered a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, true.
Well, he was off on adventures, not really a journey of discovery, right?
So you're talking more like an Easy Rider kind of story.
Yeah. It may have been because I haven't seen it in a while.
I'm just wondering if something like that was done with characters that wasn't a superhero comic, like something one of the Undergrounds or something like that.
I'm sure
some of the westerns in the 50s must have done it, but they just didn't have buddies. They didn't have sidekicks.
Like Asterix and Obelix.
Yeah, Asterix and Obelix, they go on adventures on their own. Yeah. So the first started in being published in Pilot in 1957, and the first album was collected in '59.
He pulls out dates like nobody's business.
Yeah, that was really eerie, actually.
I remember dates I remember the year I was born. I remember the year Back in Black came out. Star Wars came out in '77, and after that, it's kind of iffy.
As things start to get blurry.
80s, 90s, this century, last century. Something.
Yeah. Asterix is the distillation of an idea that I once saw Stephen Grant talk about when he had his column in Comic Book Resources. That there's only really 2 types of story. I don't remember what. I remember somebody said that there were 7 different types of story. I don't remember what they are, but then it distilled that to only 2, which is a stranger comes into town and the hero goes on an adventure. Because it's about changing the environment. A stranger comes into town, it changes the way the characters interact with each other, and the hero goes on an adventure. The hero doesn't know how the characters are supposed to behave wherever he goes.
You have a status quo, and then you've got to change the status quo.
So that boils everything down to either the spaghetti western or Campbell story.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's another one I got this week that I'm kind of a little torn on. The latest issue of Spawn 360. It's the last of the $2.99 comics. That's one of the reasons I'm buying it. But I still haven't put it on my pull list, just because I fully expect him to. I fully expect an artist to come on who I don't like. Like I like this artist here. What's his name? Carlo Barberi. But the artist who was on this book before, I couldn't stand. So I'm like, I just started picking up Spawn sort of out of nostalgia, even though I never bought Spawn before. But it's 30 years old now, so there's some nostalgia there, even though I didn't read more than a handful of issues, and because it's $3 instead of $4, and because the art's like old school Spawn art. But Todd McFarlane still isn't that good a writer after 300 issues. He still isn't that good a writer. And there's one page. I mean, it's adequate generally since the art carries a lot of it. But there's this one page in here that just kills me. Let me show you this. It's this one page over here with the big thum. See, it's just one guy standing there, and then this panel down the bottom that you can hardly tell what's going on because there's a big thum over it. Tell me.
It's a thum with a view.
He then, being that you really can't tell what's going on, Todd McFarlane then describes what's going on. At the same time, Omega, wounded as he is, begins transforming his horns into a pair of battering rams, then charges full force, destroying everything in his path except his intended target. That would have been really great if he drew, if all that was drawn in there.
So that's a Roy Thomas description box there.
It was just like you describe. We get is this kind of vague panel of the guy bashing his head into something. It was just kind of like, I read that. I just laughed out loud when I read that. I was just, oh, come on, Todd, you don't know by now not to It was like he was describing what he wanted to happen in that page rather than have the guy draw what happened. It was just so weird reading that.
It's like the subtitles kicked in all of a sudden.
Yeah. Because I'm like, but most of the storytelling is pretty solid in this. Most of the writing is not spectacular, but solid. You can tell it was going until I got to that one page and was just like, what is he? How does he not know not to do this after 300 issues? But now they're coming out with 3 other Spawn books, so they can have a sort of little Spawn universe going on. Oh boy! And I'm like, I'm not sure if I really want to continue buying one Spawn book, let alone 3 others. But I kind of want to also.
Well, I get back to what we were talking about earlier. If they did it as like a compilation book.
Yeah. One of the books I used to like as a kid. Well, I wasn't quite a kid. I was probably in high school at the time. Do you remember in the late 70s, early 80s maybe, when World's Finest was a $1 book and I remember it had Trevor Von Eden's Green Arrow in it, and it also had probably a Batman and Superman story. Had maybe 3 or 4 stories in it.
Yeah, usually at least 3 or 4, maybe sometimes more.
Right, and there weren't any reprints in it either.
No, it was like a $1 format.
Yeah, it was like one of there was like no $1 books left except that one too. And it must have been around 1980 because that's when I started picking up DC comics finally, with the Teen Titans with George Perez. Mm-hmm. And I used to like World's Finest, not because it was great, but because there was a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So it was like sometimes just getting a big, thick comic and reading it is, even though all the stories are kind of middle of the road.
Probably around the same time or a little bit earlier when DC was doing their war books, they would have, the $1 format, giant size, GI Combat or Weird War Tales, whatever it may be. And, had 4 or 5 stories in each one. You got a lot of bang for the buck back then.
Yeah, when the newsstands told the publishers to bugger off in the 70s because comics were too cheap.
Right.
That's the thing about price per page. If the comics were larger, I still think that comics should not have kept the 10-cent price in 1951. But well, that was 1951. But they did another mistake then. If Marvel and DC had a more $1 comics, they could still be in the newsstands. It would still be an important part of their business, and they wouldn't have to put out 50 comics a month. They could just have 2 to 4 magazines a month each, and have a bunch of stories in there, and they would cost $1, and they would sell in newsstands.
Yeah, that's the Japanese format. Works well for them. But like I said, I think the Comics Code infantilizing U.S. comics really hurt. That really hurt every business model except selling cheap comics to kids.
Right.
That was the only business model left for comics.
Yeah, and especially because it didn't really need to be. I mean, am I right in thinking that the U.S. is pretty much the only place that infantilized the comics? Like, I feel like,
as far as I know, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other countries that they had government offices telling publishers what they could or couldn't do, and in the U.S. that office was a private company. Right. But still a
private company who sold comics to kids. Didn't want the competition too.
Yeah, but
they specifically put EC Comics out of business.
And the French and the Italians would go to lengths to make sure that they would put not one past the code, but everything past the code. And they would get court orders telling them to stop publishing.
Wow.
One of my favorite memories of working at Marvel was, I don't know if you ever saw this, Daisy, watching Don Daly wheel and deal with the Comics Code. Don Daly was the editor of The Punisher in the early to mid 90s.
Yep.
And he would be putting stuff in there that the Comics Code would take out so he could get other stuff through.
I totally remember that, actually. He'd come in
and he'd be like, okay, put in, because one of the things you couldn't have was exit wounds.
Yes.
So if somebody was getting shot, you could have an entrance wound, but no exit wound.
Right.
And so we go, okay, put an exit wound in there to see if we can get the blood passed on page 4. If we put an exit wound on page 5, they'll take that out and let us get the blood passed on page 6, and he'd be wheeling and dealing.
Yep.
Howler has got strep throat. So he is not here today. And I don't know how his elbow went. He said he may have had an infection on his elbow to go with his strep throat. So I don't think talking tonight wasn't in his wheelhouse with strep throat.
Never had strep, and I don't particularly want it.
I had it as a kid, but since I got my aberrant tonsils, I don't have strep throat, which is just tonsil tissue all around your throat. I don't usually. I get weird things though, but not strep throat. I get my tonsils swell up sometimes. It's tough to breathe. That doesn't happen very often.
But I bet it's comfortable.
Oh yeah, it's comfortable. And maybe Tim. This is like Tim being a social worker out there meeting with the public. He's like the only one I know who's gotten sick like 3 or 4 times during COVID.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Not with COVID, but with other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he got checked. That's how they know he has strep.
Well, it's funny you brought that up. Like with a lot of the COVID precautions, they've noticed it's cut way, way, way down on flu cases.
Yeah, because we're all hunkered down.
Right.
I very happily not had in a while.
Let's see another comic I got this week. It's funny. There are 2 sideways covers this week. I don't know why. But Crossover has got a sideways cover. This is Crossover number 5. Donnie Cates, Jeff Shaw, D. Cuniff, and John J. Hill. This is like, I don't know if anybody's read this one, but this is the one that's kind of got a crossover of a bunch of it's got a crossover of a bunch of indie characters. Plus, it's got the basic concept is a whole bunch of superhero characters have crossed over into our world. And if now some of them were taken hostage by the military or whatever, and they built a dome over Denver, and they're all hanging out there, and some are trying to get back inside. There's conflict going on, but it's been kind of fun. They've got like Donnie Cates. It's got Madman, Mike Allred's Madman in it. It's got the Paybacks, who were a dark horse. I don't know who created them. And they've got Donnie Cates, the Big Sword, who's a lead character in his God Country show. Excellent insider views. Yeah, Don Daly. I got another insider view for you here in one of the back issues I got. But I've been enjoying crossovers. Once again, this one's a solid B. I'm not telling you it's great. I don't like covers that are a big logo. You get a big logo and a truck. Now that doesn't say excitement to me. But it's been a fun series. And what's weird is, once again, I was just reading one of the comic shop newses, and this story concludes with issue 6. In issue 7, I think, who is it? A new writer is going to be writing issue 7. And it just said in the blurb, it's a crossover. We'll explain it in the issue. Who was it? It was Chip Zdarsky. That's who it is. Is going to be writing issue 7. Well, I don't know if he's going to be writing the next arc or just issue 7, but someone different will be writing it. So it's kind of like, okay.
I'm sorry about the dog show in the background.
Didn't even notice.
They're just doing a reenactment of the Godzilla versus Kong battle.
Yeah, they're best friends. So sorry if the noise gets too much. I'll corral them somewhere.
I don't think they'll be louder than us.
Yeah, that's true.
And I noticed that here's another Flaming Cerebus comic.
Ooh.
Dave Sim, every new issue is a number 1. I noticed he puts the print run on the front now. And this is issue 703 of 1959. And every issue is a parody cover. This is a parody of Flaming Carrot comics, of course.
Yeah, that's
I noticed that the print runs go up with however popular the parody cover is. And obviously Flaming Carrot isn't that popular, so the print run came down under 2,000. For a popular one, it's up around 2,500.
Yeah, that's such a tiny print run.
Oh,
But you know.
Speculators. Yeah.
Rare number 1 comic.
And what's crazy about this one too is what it is I think he does this as a web comic, so you can read it on the web. But I never have. I like reading it. So each one, Dave Sim can't draw anymore because of a wrist ailment. Right. So he does this cut and paste comic strip, which I generally find amusing.
That's kind of the way it works.
This issue was all about Canadian politics.
Hey.
That's interesting.
I mean, I found it amusing, but sometimes I was like, who's going to buy this? Are you trying not to sell copies?
If you were to go back and reread that issue 20 years from now, would it make any sense?
It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me right now.
Right.
Well, actually, some of it did, because it's kind of broad in its politics, but...
Okay.
And there was all sorts of weird stuff going on. He's got... The way he constructs these strips is he's got Cerebus in hell. So it's not Cerebus. At the end of the 300 issue series, Cerebus died. So the name of this comic is Cerebus in Hell ? because is he really in hell? There's this whole, he doesn't want to say Cerberus is in hell, but he's really, whatever. But anyway, most of it takes place in hell. And Dante and Virgil are also two characters who are in it a lot. Dante, the guy who wrote Dante's Inferno,
right,
and Virgil, the Greek philosopher, who in Dante's Inferno was Dante's guide through hell. Not that I've read Dante's Inferno, I've just read about it. So it's like the beginning ones especially were Cerberus, Virgil, and Dante making these jokes, But you've got like 3 levels of jokes. You've got Cerberus and his dialogue. You've got like up here, there's like a little, it's called after gag guy. There's like a little 1 or 2 sentence joke up there too, where I guess it's kind of like Dave Sim explaining the joke sometimes, or just throwing a little sugar on top of the joke. And then you've got captions. So a lot of this issue was like interplay between after gag guy, caption guy, and Cerberus guy. And it was just like, what? We've reached a level with these jokes that they're so meta sometimes that it's like Cerberus is aware that there's a caption guy, and it's like they're all 3 personalities.
Gotcha.
It's
I think that would make it, if he's aware there's a caption guy, that's going to make it funnier.
Yeah, it does. But it's just weird that there was so much interaction between Cerberus, caption guy, and after gag guy. And after gag guy and caption guy, of course, are just letters. There's no.
Right.
It's just kind of like weird. But this was an especially weird issue. But like he did one issue. What was it dedicated to? The issue I liked the least was the whole issue he was making fun of the Real Housewives of whoever.
Whatever city.
And I was just like,
I saw that his Strange Death of Alex Raymond is actually going to
Yeah, I'm going to get. He actually gave the publishing rights to the other artist.
Mm-hmm.
And what bothers me about here? We'll go into some artistic terms here. What annoys me about did you read any of Glamour Puss, where it originally came from?
Just the 2 or 3 issues I could find, and mainly I got those for that backstory, not for the.
Oh yeah, that backstory was the best part of Glamour Puss. But what annoys me is Dave Sim, and I noticed it in the I think in this comic shop news, they announced that it's coming out in the. They don't know what a photo. They keep referring to them as photorealist artists, like Dave Sim's work because he worked from photographs. It's like, but it's like that's not photorealism.
Right.
It's like photorealism is a specific. It's like I always like what if you want to be taken seriously in the art world, you better learn what the words you're using mean. Because just because you use a photo to draw from doesn't make what you do photorealistic.
Right.
Photorealistic was a term that was invented in the 60s for a group of artists who, when you look at the group of painters, who, when you look at their work, the first thing you say to yourself is that a photograph? Because they're painting as the camera sees. Guys in comics have been photoreferencing stuff for, 100 years. But that's photo reference.
Right.
I don't get why somebody would confuse that.
Because they don't know.
Well, also, too, when you have people that work outside of an industry or aren't familiar with it, they'll latch on to a catchphrase.
Right.
Yeah.
And Dave Sim used that photorealism to describe, what's his name? Stan Drake's work in the 50s in the Jessica Jones and other comics, because, and Alice Raymond stuff. And it's like Stan Drake's work was not. He referenced things, but that doesn't make it photorealism, and it just drives me crazy whenever he says.
Yeah, there's not really a convenient term that describes that art style either.
Photo reference. That's how we always described it.
And it would be impossible to accurately replicate a photo in drawing in the 1930s. So Alex Raymond could never be photorealistic.
Right. Yeah, so it's like that's called photo referenced usually. When that art style is a photo referenced art style. That's generally that's what I was taught in school.
Yeah.
You know, but these guys were not taught it in school, so they don't know the terms. And it's like, you know what? Look them up. They think that Stan Drake is photorealistic. He's not. So that's it drives me crazy.
There are Wikipedia articles to help you.
Yeah. Like I always hear, comic book people don't like it when you mess up comic book terms. Like when you call word balloons word bubbles. That makes a lot. Yeah, exactly. That's like chalk on fingernails on the chalkboard to a lot of people. So.
Yep. But hey, it is what it is.
There's the phrase I can't stand. What is it?
That phrase means absolutely nothing.
I know. It's like, yeah, that's the intel, Eagle Eye.
That is the Seinfeld of phrases. It's a phrase about nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also a statement of the obvious.
Well, I actually, when I posted that, I actually I couldn't take it because this guy, a YouTuber, Comics by Perch, who generally puts out some good videos, but he actually, and he uses that phrase sometimes, but I couldn't take it when he actually used it as a dodge. And who knows if he's even aware that he's doing this. But that's when he said, fair, unfair, it is what it is. I'm like, no, you can't. It's either fair or unfair. Pick one. What does it is what it is mean in that context? It means I don't want to pick one. That just made me go, oh, I can't take this anymore.
Starts with a photo and then makes it look like a drawing. Oh.
That is a photo reference. And that's what most... And if you don't look at it and go, my goodness, is that a photograph? Then it's photo referenced. And that's been going on forever. But, but what's difference between photo reference and photorealism is trying to trick the eye. And the camera sees differently than the human eye sees. So you're trying to paint as the camera sees. So there's depth of field. Look up photorealism 1960s, and you'll see stuff where you'll go, is that a photograph? Because unlike a photograph, everything can be crisp and clear. But they were specifically trying to paint as the camera sees, right. And the word was invented for them.
And then you have rotoscoping, which is different animal. It's like it's a little more than photo reference, but it's not photorealism. And there you have Disney's.
Yeah, that's just an animation technique.
Yeah, that's Ralph Bakshi's technique to save money.
Yeah, it's everybody's. Well, anywhere you can save money in animation, that's what you do. But that's why, like, when you see classic Disney movies like Cinderella, and Cinderella's dancing around, it's because they traced over an actual dancer dancing around the room.
Yeah. Or when they did Clutch Cargo and just kept the animation the same, but had the mouths move.
Oh my God, that creeps me out so badly with the red lips moving around.
Yeah, it's kind of like a very localized uncanny valley effect.
Yeah.
And photo reference refers to both of those techniques. You don't have to be looking at the photo. You can be drawing right on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't an artist that needs photo references constantly have a more naturalist style as his usual style?
Because because from what I've been told, even though I haven't seen a lot of it, Sergio Aragonés can do a completely different art style than what most people know him for. So, and he's considered more as a cartoonist across the world.
Yeah. You wouldn't think of him working from photographs.
Yeah, but Alex Raymond would be considered realistic for his time, and this style is close to a classic style, which is what I identify as naturalist for the time.
Well, I mean, guys like him and Hal Foster, they were heavily influenced by book illustrators.
Mm-hmm.
They also used to use models.
Yeah.
They used to draw from models.
They use models.
Nope. Photos.
No, it's interesting. I was just reading something about an old lawsuit for one of these old-time illustrator cartoonists who used models, and sometimes their wives would model for them. And it was in some divorce proceeding.
Yeah.
The wife was angry because her husband took pictures. Because if you were modeling for your husband and he took a picture, that they didn't want him taking pictures because then they were, I don't know, pornographers or something and not art models. But that was a line that they drew that that like the wives drew when modeling for their husband artists is no pictures. Because that's a whole different ball game once there's pictures. And I think actual models drew that line too. If you're being hired as an art model, you can't take pictures. I was like, I never thought of that before because
it's totally understandable though. I mean,
especially the wife, it came up in the divorce. That's why I don't know where I read that recently, but I was reading it somewhere.
Don't sell those pictures of me and you in the gorilla suit.
No, it's funny. I actually bought, I have them here somewhere, photos of the models. Because sometimes I go on eBay and I buy old negatives. Just because I like to work with other people's images sometimes. So you can buy negatives on eBay of whatever. And I bought negatives one time. I think I made a photo out of them. I don't know. I'll have to look. Of an art model's model. It was. I had to look up it was an illustrator. His estate was selling. I think he died like 40 years ago, but somebody was just cleaning out whatever his estate was, and he had just pictures of art models, just a couple of them, just black and white photos of art model that he must have been using. But it was funny because I think someone else was because she was obviously not posing for the camera. She was posing for somebody in front of her, and the camera wasn't even that close to her. The camera was taking a picture of her like she was on a stage, kind of too, not like for a picture. So it was an interesting little photographs that just popped up that I was like, oh, I'll get some of these just because who knew they existed. Maybe we need Hal Foster used photo reference, but I don't understand it does something. Well, there's more than one. There's more than one way to use photo reference. Some people draw right over I usually draw, if I use photo reference, like in today's digital age, I'll draw right over the picture. But it's just an underdrawing. It's not like I'm trying to duplicate anything.
Sure. It's a tool, not a technique.
Yeah. And there's some people who can just look at the photo and just draw what's there. So. Yeah, paint a lot of nudes and get releases for everyone. Interesting. Here's the last of my new comics this week, which has a sideways cover that's really nice. Let me make this. This is Usagi Yojimbo, Wanderer's Road, whatever number this is. But this is another Peach Momoko cover. Well, I'd never heard of until she started doing these Usagi covers, but I guess she's pretty popular.
It's still weird for me to see anybody else other than Stan do a Usagi cover.
Yeah, but I'm okay with the reprints having people other because I have the original cover up there. Oh, number 5 this is. But yeah, nice cover. Like it's weird that there's 2 sideways covers in 1 week. But excellent issue too. Just about every issue of Usagi is excellent. This one was really good. One I haven't read since 1987 or whenever it first came out.
Yeah. Those are in color, right?
Yeah, these are in color. These are new. And once again, like Paolo, they're putting these out as issues in color to make some money, and then they're putting them out in trade. Right. They could just put them out in trade, but then they'd have to, put up all that money first to pay the colorist.
Yeah.
And that's what Walking Dead is doing too.
They're still doing Walking Dead comics?
No, they finally ended it a couple of years ago. but they're just coloring because since it was a black and white series, they're coloring the whole series, and first they're issuing them as individual issues in color, which I would buy if they weren't $4 an issue and coming out twice a month. I just have no interest in paying $8 a month for Walking Dead when I know they're going to put it in a collected edition.
I was just going to say, by the graphic novel. That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah, you're a real sucker. If you're like one of my, I don't know if Daisy has ever heard this one. One of my little analogies. That's the word I'm working for. Is the Brooklyn Bridge effect, and it's talking about trying to decide whether to buy individual issues or wait for trade. And when you're coming down the FDR from the north and you're going over the Brooklyn Bridge on a busy day, there's a lane that you can get into that's the Brooklyn Bridge exit lane. But of course, people don't get into that exit lane. They go exactly what I'm talking about, as far up as you can and cut into it.
I have a great story about that, by the way, but it has nothing to do with comics. But.
So when you're crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, you have two choices. You're the sucker who sits in the lane, or you're the asshole who cuts it off. There's no third choice. There's no secret way across the Brooklyn Bridge. You're either the sucker or the asshole. Make your choice. And that's how I feel with comics sometimes. Is you're either the sucker who buys the individual issue or the asshole who waits for the sucker to subsidize the individual issue and picks up the trade.
That's a perfect analogy, but it only works if you understand the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah. That's why I explain it. There is no, I said, you have no choice. You're a sucker, or I'm sure there's other places like that. I mean, the Brooklyn Bridge is not the only place where there's an exit lane that backs up and people cut. But I just call it the Brooklyn Bridge effect because that's where I first thought of it.
Yep. The entire beltway around DC is like that.
What was that?
The entire beltway around Washington D.C. is like that.
Right. I think it's easily relatable. Like I said, those are your two choices: sucker or asshole. And I think
it kind of extends too, because sometimes on the Brooklyn Bridge they have a cop waiting there, and you get bagged when you go into that illegal lane. So, but also you're gambling that they're going to come out with a graphic novel of whatever it is that you like, and maybe they'll come out with that for like 7 years. So if you choose to be an asshole, you're also taking a chance.
And also, if it doesn't sell enough in individual issues, it gets canceled and they might never come out with a. So there's risks to being an asshole too.
There are risks to being an asshole. I'm still definitely the asshole, but
I'm the sucker. But I would really be a sucker if I were buying that monthly Walking Dead, which I'm buying the recolored Usagi Yojimbos that I already have, so I'm obviously the audience for it.
They're pretty.
But when I think it's too much I'd be too much of a sucker buying them.
Right.
Never thought of it that way, but I guess that makes me an asshole comic reader. Yeah, you're one of the. There's no middle ground. There's no double secret way to buy comics where you're not a sucker or an asshole. You're one or the other. I'm generally the sucker. Not all the time. Sometimes I'm the asshole, but I'm generally the sucker.
If you want a license for other countries, they only put out trades. Unless it's Marvel and sometimes DC. Any other series needs to come out as trades right off the bat. Otherwise, they'll get canceled.
Yeah, that's because the whole rest of the world is assholes. We know that.
Yeah, and even our trades are cheaper. And we have 200-page Disney comics that only cost $4.
Yeah. Well, once again, that's why manga is so cheap over here, because it's the labor is already done. You're just licensing it, so it's not like you don't have to pay for the original. Over here, we have to pay for the original. We're the ones who pay for the original. so that they can license it cheaper, because that money's all gravy to the publishers. They don't have to do anything except collect it.
What?
It's not easy being Daisy. All these demands on her time.
Spencer keeps holding things up and pointing at them, and
telling you to talk about them.
I don't know. I can't see them from here.
You're old and her eyesight isn't good.
You need binoculars.
I do. I need binoculars for close up and far away.
How old is Spencer now? 14?
Yeah, he's gonna be 15 in August.
So she can get the young perspective on everybody.
Oh, yeah, you can you can give a perspective, but he hasn't read. I don't think he's read comics in a while. He's more into the Godzilla versus Kong and that whole kaiju universe. And all that
it's tough to capture the young with comics these days. It really is.
It is. It's the internet really caters to a shorter attention span, which is not, not an insult.
I read comics, mostly Alien and Predator.
Oh, he does read comics. The Alien and Predator comics shows how much I know.
Yeah, we remember what it's like to be bored, and we tried to do anything to avoid being bored. So if there was,
we pull down tree branches.
Yeah. If there was anything that we could do to avoid getting bored, we would do it. Even read comics.
Not only would we pull on the tree branches, but we would do it with our prehensile tails because we hadn't evolved at that point yet.
I used to cry if I got too bored. My mom would find me crying somewhere in a chair. She'd be like, "What's the matter? I'm bored. I don't know what to do." And
my mother would give me the "you want me to find you something to do" line, which meant chores. I'll give you something to do.
I could totally see your mom saying that
too. We didn't tell our mother we were bored.
I guess it was one of the perks of being an only child that I could manage to do that. But she would hide books and drawing supplies and stuff around the house. So if I got bored, she'd be like, "Oh, here."
Marvel came out with a new Alien #1, I think just last week.
Really?
Because Marvel has the rights to Alien versus Predator now, since Disney bought the properties.
Gotcha.
So I don't think I've seen anyone show it off on YouTube or review it. So I have no idea if it's what it even looks like. So I just got a black cover.
It's like the exact opposite effect of when the Conan license went from Dark Horse to Marvel.
Yeah.
It's like the exact opposite. Because when that happened, everybody's like, I never understood. So you guys don't realize that Dark Horse published this stuff for 20-some years before, and they don't care.
And Conan was in every book when Marvel got the license back, and Alien hasn't been. It's kind of crazy.
So it's a new Alien book. It's not Alien.
Yeah, it's a new Alien book.
No, it's
Alien.
Yeah, it's set in the Alien.
They might be putting out Alien versus Predator sometime, but
I'm sure.
Right now, just Alien #1, the very first thing from that. What is that?
New
Fox? Yeah.
Well, there's a new Alien book, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he and Keith can go get that tomorrow if they get in the mood. I don't know, whatever. But thanks for the intel.
Yeah, it's something that always just drove me crazy. Is people seem to care. I guess it's name brand recognition. They seem to care when Marvel has the license, but when somebody else had it before that and did a really good job at it for 20-some years, is what is that?
So many fans don't keep track of anything but Marvel.
Yeah.
I used to love when I would find some out of the way newsstand that didn't have that didn't clear out their back issues or something like that, and they were just, oh man, I can remember once we took a family vacation. This is 1980 or so. I was probably 14 or 15. We drove out to Montana. Now here's a weird thing. We'd stop at truck stops along the way, and I don't know where they got them, but they had back issues of they must have got them at some distributor somewhere, because I remember that's where I got my issue of X-Men 100 3 years after it came out. I only bought one. They had like a whole stack of them. I should have bought all of them. But I would buy like comics that were like 3-4 years old at these truck stops.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my favorite part of the whole vacation, getting those comics at the truck stops. Then we did that family vacation 2 years in a row. And the second year, all the comics were gone.
You bought them all?
No, they did a ton. I was like, I wonder what. I was like, well, occasionally one would have some back, but it was like, wow, I wonder what. To this day, I wonder what happened. That in like 1980, there were all these old comics in truck stops. In like 1981, they were all gone. Some dealer
distribution deal.
Yeah. They must have been falling off the back of the truck distribution stuff from a few years ago that they somehow got their hands on.
That reminds me of the convention. I think I went to the comic convention in 1993 when all of us from the bullpen went over there. Uh-huh. And I found a vendor that was selling the original, 3-inch tall Star Wars figures for like $1 a piece. It was either $1 or $2 in the box. Yeah. And you just fish through the box, and I must have bought like 80 of those. And then a year or two later, suddenly they were selling for like $50 a piece.
Yeah,
and that was the first accidental bonanza that I ever got. That was like a comic thing, but it's not like I was going to sell them. So
making curry.
Oh,
I started making started making some chili earlier in the day. I just cut up the vegetables and put them in. What was that?
With the meatballs?
Yeah, I'm going to make the meatballs tomorrow because tomorrow I'm actually going to cook the chili. But I like to like sort of cut up all the vegetables, put it in the pot and spice it and leave that in the fridge overnight.
Yeah, if you get all your prep done beforehand, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's what I have to do when I make chicken tikka masala. Or tikka masala, because it's got like 40 billion spices. So
and here is the chili with meatballs. I started doing that like just like last year sometime. I've been making chili since the early 90s. And I usually make it with chili meat, stew meat. Sometimes I put like ground turkey in just because I like the texture of the ground meat in it too. And like 6 months ago, I was like, I feel like little meatballs. Why don't I make this turkey into little meatballs? And so I used all the same chili spices in the meat, made little meatballs, put them in the chili, and really liked them.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about chili is you can mix and match all kinds of different ingredients.
Yeah. Hit a gas station that didn't clear out old issues from the spinner rack. Love that because I could pick up a two-parter without missing the next issue. Yeah.
Yep.
That back before there was comic shops, we found, when I could find comics at the rare times I found comics at garage sales, it was like heaven. Woo-hoo. Oh, there's the new Beagle. Puppet dog. This is I actually bought some back issues this week, which I hardly ever do. But this is the first one I had to get. I hate that. Why doesn't mycomicshop.com put the stickers on the back of the cover? Yeah. This is Rex Mundi #3. And I had to I had Raiders of the Lost Ark syndrome with this one.
Which is?
I bought this I reread my Rex Mundis last year. Mm-hmm. And as I was rereading them, issue 3 wasn't there. Now I know I bought it because it was on my pull list. I got all the issues. It's in my database. It somehow got misfiled, which means I'll only find it when I'm looking through some other series, some other day, and go, what's Rex Mundi doing in the middle of Invincible? Yeah. But other than that, I'll never be able to find it. So I'm like, you know what? I may as well buy it.
Eventually,
that's what happened when I was like, where's #3?
Yeah, we need to get to the point where we have a comics bag and it's got a little micro tracker system built into it.
Ooh, I like that.
Where in my house is this damn book?
I actually have in my database of comics, I have their location. Bedroom bookcase, shelf 2. Studio bookcase, shelf 4. Studio bookcase D, shelf 4. Studio box A. I actually, because I have to do that. I've got like 12,000 comics. And as I heard someone say once, if you can't find something, you don't have a collection. You have an accumulation.
That's perfect.
Bell somewhere. I don't know. So I always kind of agreed with that. So
definitely true.
Yeah.
Definitely true. I just heard a piece of paper fall.
Yeah, a friend of mine from the
Monday number 3 is what it was.
A friend of mine from auto racing, he says that he stopped collecting 143 models of cars because they were going straight inside a cupboard.
No.
Right.
And he had bought. He had already bought a display case. It got filled up in one day, and the cupboard was still full of cars.
Sometimes you get to the point where you're like, you know what? I don't need any more cars.
Yeah, like I don't need any more comics.
But at least you read comics.
Yeah.
That's when I get rid of comics. When I say, am I ever going to read this again? And if I'm not, I can pass it on, sell it on, do whatever.
And then
that seems to work best for me. What was that, Scott?
And then buy more comics with that money.
And then buy more. Yeah, fill up the space again. But then you got to get rid of stuff. As you get more stuff, I get rid of stuff. Yeah, I've actually kept my collection around the same number for about 10 years now. Because not counting Jerry's comics that are in the garage, I got to do something about them.
Yeah, Mike Kaluta had a quote where, like, anytime he got a new book, when he shoved it in the small amount of space he had left, another book would pop out the window.
Did Jerry give you all his comics? Did you just say?
Yeah, he gave me a whole. But when he was moving apartments right at the beginning of COVID, he's like, "You want to come down and take these comics?" I was like, "Sure." I was like, so I got all those comics, and they're really not worth much.
Are they new stuff, or are they just stuff that we got at
the stuff that he got over the years at Marvel? But they were never bagged, let alone bagged or boarded. They were just in random boxes, not even comic boxes. So they got moved over. So they're not even anywhere near mint condition. They're like, because they've got all scuffs on them, and because they've just been in boxes being moved back and forth for 20 years.
Right.
They're not in terrible condition. But it's not like you can get, it's CGC'd and it'll get a 9.8. It'll get a 7.8, which isn't bad, but that's not always what people are looking for, especially since they're just random comics mostly.
Right.
I was going to say the same thing. At least you're reading them. Yeah. I don't count my comic books, but no, there's about 2 tons now. I like the idea of collection. By the way,
I was looking at some bags where I had comics that I hadn't read. I bought this like 2 years ago, and I only read it last week.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah,
that happens to me more with collected editions than with comics.
Yeah, this was an original graphic novel. It's a biographical comic about a Portuguese artist from the 19th century. He used to do caricatures, political cartoons. He had a comics page in one of his magazines in the 1870s.
Wow. Wow. Now here's a Marvel story. This actually is what precipitated me buying some back issues, which I almost never do, because I'd completely forgotten. This is Marvel Comics Presents 174. And I put this on my want list on mycomicshop.com, Lone Star Comics. And I completely forgot. All of a sudden, like last month, I got an email from them that said, "Oh, this comic on your want list has showed up."
Right.
I was like, "Why do I have that on my want list?" And it turns out the reason I have it on my want list, let me share my screen again, is because of, this is a picture I took along with a whole bunch of portraits in the bullpen. And this is George Roussos, who used to work with us at Marvel. He did color corrections and he was the color colorist. When he actually inked some of the earliest issues of Batman. And way down here, I actually put the story on the back of this photo and put it in the comic. And I also put a close-up of it. Let me take the whole thing out. Way down here, you can see him working on coloring a comic. There's a blow-up of the comics page. And I posted this in my Marvel group on Facebook, and people were figuring out which comic it was. So it turns out to be this comic, and I bought it just because there's the page he's coloring right there. So I put this comic. I just wanted this comic because I have a picture of George Roussos coloring it.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm like, you know what? And I saw it pop up, and it popped up on my want list. I'm like, what is it? Here's the other. Marvel Comics Presents had 2 covers on them.
Yeah, like when I make a want list on paper now, sometimes I'll put in parentheses or whatever, like there's a certain artist or writer on it, so I understand why I actually want it.
Yeah, good idea. Like I said, that's why I put, and I actually wrote that little story on the back of this photo of George, just in case anyone else ever gets it, so they'll know.
Right.
That has a Simon Beasley cover. Which is pretty rare, right? He's never done that much work for Marvel.
Is it? Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, most of Simon's work was at DC for the
that's biz.
other stuff.
A lot of people worked for Marvel Comics Presents though, because they needed so much work. And the coloring credit on this is actually Ashley Pozzella. So George must have been doing a correction on it. Or else coloring the logo he could have been doing too.
All I remember about George was that he couldn't stand me. Justifiably back then, but that's my biggest memory. He used to mutter under his breath about Michelle and I.
Yeah, he was a breath mutterer, and he'd also, and when we'd get too loud, my God, they're gonna fire the lot of us. They're gonna fire all of us.
Yep, totally. And
he was a Depression era guy, so.
Oh yeah. No, I can absolutely understand why Michelle and I irritated the hell out of him. He was always like, bitches, shut up.
Marvel Fanfare was supposed to, in the early 80s, was supposed to be Marvel's prestige line.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be their best artists with the best printing and the best coloring.
Right.
And for maybe the first 12 issues it was. Then it became Inventory, the book. And it didn't have the best artists. And it lasted about 50 issues, though. I think I only collected it the first year or two. When then all of a sudden it was like not...
Issues 1 and 2 had Inventory. Because that was a Marvel team-up.
Yeah, but it was Michael Golden, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was Michael.
I think they wanted to print that story on good paper. That's why they saved it.
Yeah, I have the issues with that Charles Vest did the Warriors 3 stories for.
Yeah, those are in that first 12 issues. I think I have some of those. Sometimes it was premier artists, but a lot of times it was That's why I kind of gave up on the book.
And then there was that Ken Stacy story with Iron Man and Dr. Octopus, which nobody really understood.
And I was a fan of Ken Stacy from Epic.
Yeah.
But that story didn't Didn't do much. Like, I don't have to look at which. I think I still have the first 12 issues of Marvel Fanfare, but nothing really beyond that. Then there was like issue 50, or there was a few famous issues like way later on in the run too that I know people who like, that have some really good artists in them, but I can't remember who now. Like Craig Russell may have done some stuff later on, and other people, but I never had that.
Had inked Gil Kane in that adaptation of the Jungle Book.
Yeah.
That was early on.
Hey, Russell is a lot of good people.
Just this moment, I got a mycomicshop.com want list notice. Speak of the devil.
Did you ever notice you'll get those in spurts? Like you'll get 3 or 4, and then months and months will go by, and all of a sudden you get like 12 of them at a time.
Right. Well, that's right. I forgot one other thing I wanted to show because it's in a different size.
Oh, and William Bird said here that he's been listening to the comic book historian's 8-hour interview with Jim Shooter. Okay, the stories are all true unless they're not.
And Miller did a Cap story, I think, in 18. Yeah, there was some. I got to know it must be a few collections. Yeah. Have you guys ever seen this? This is what Fantagraphics called their Ignatz format. It's here's a regular comic, so you can see it's a little bit taller, a little bit wider. It's more Golden Age size.
Yeah, say Golden Age.
And this Delphine by Richard Sala. This came out back in 2006, 2007. And I had these issues since they came out. But I must have just been like picking them up off the shelf or something. And I never had them order them for me. So then I just missed issues 3 and 4. And since like 2008, actually, I didn't even know there was issues 3 and 4 for a while because I never saw them.
Right.
And then I found out there was issues 3 or 4, and I've wanted them for ages. And usually you don't see them on eBay. People want like $50 a book. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody would pay $50 a book. But this one finally came up. Number 3 finally came up on Texas Comics, my Lone Star Comics. This came up, and it was like $3-4 or something. So I was like, I'll finally get this one. I'll get issue 4 someday. But the funny thing was, when I got this, I was showing it off on my comic book haul I did. And I took it out, and there were stickers on the front of it. And if you ever want to take stickers off a comic, Bestine rubber cement thinner is what you use. But the stickers had the name of another comic shop on it. And guess what comic shop it was? Jim Hanley's Universe. Jim Hanley's. Which was our local comic shop to Marvel when we were in that part of Manhattan. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I don't know how this ended up in Texas with a Jim Hanley's Universe. I don't know why Jim Hanley's Universe was putting the sticker on the cover. I'm like, who puts stickers on the covers?
Yeah, there's a special level of hell for people that put stickers on book covers.
Yeah. But it's a nice big format with this nice big Richard Sala stuff in it. They sell it all collected, but it's smaller.
Did Henley do a lot of mail order?
Sticker.
I don't know if
with
Henley
the price
mail order
on the back cover in an actual comic shop, not in a regular bookstore.
Winsor Smith did Great Things story also. No. Now the Bestine doesn't damage the cover at all. If you look on I made a video of it once. If you look on how to remove tape on my channel, you'll see a video of me using Bestine on an old issue of comic I put tape on. The Bestine has such a high evaporation rate that it doesn't damage the comic. It could give you nerve damage if you bathe in it, so you don't want to do that.
So don't bathe in. Okay.
Don't bathe
My
in.
plans for the weekend.
When it came, when it was first mail, a fanzine at a Winnipeg address, right? Excellent. Yeah, it doesn't. I eventually found the guy on Facebook, had a brief chat with him. That's funny. Found the original owner of the fanzine.
What else you got for show and tell?
The next book I got was one of my favorites of recent years. Once again, I finally got these. This is Uber.
Oh, yeah.
The first series, I bought issues 25, 26, and 27, which was the 3 I was missing. And I had to get 27 off of eBay. These were like $3 a piece on my comic shop, but I had to pay $8 for the eBay one because it was a $4 book and $4 shipping. But I first read this digitally a few years ago. Then I said, I want the actual issues. So I looked on eBay for the actual issues and ended up getting issues 1 through 24 of the 27 issue series.
Right.
And then I went to read it like last year and I was like, hey, I forgot I'm missing 3 issues.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I read those 3 issues digitally to end it. I was kind of disappointed. So then I put them on my want list, and they came out with at least 2 of them. The premise of Uber is one of my favorites. If you like World War II, you like history, and you like superheroes, you'll like Uber. Because it's a story about, in the waning days of World War II, the Germans discover how to make superheroes. And one of the cool things, the story opens with a woman who's a British spy fleeing Nazi Germany with the book in hand on how to make superheroes. The problem is the book is, he enjoys all of those things. The book they think was written by aliens. They don't even know. So they're having to translate the book, and it's not very easy. But the Germans have a 6 or a year ahead. They're a year ahead now, and it takes time to make super people. So now, and what's cool about it is he tries to come up with ways to see how the super people, how they'd work in a military situation. Meaning, and basically what they found out from like what they learned from the Germans first is you have to imagine that each person has like 4 containers in them. And you can fill up each container with some sort of superpower, maybe. You can fill up like 3 containers with this superpower. You can fill up 1 container with this superpower. But it's like some people only have 1 container. Some people have 4 containers. And the most powerful ones, I think, have 6. You can do like 6 procedures to them. And what it is and it's like those are the battles. So there's different classes, and they're military. So it's like the strongest ones are battleships, and they basically have what's called a halo effect, which is an energy burst. They can destroy things from far away. They can have super strength. They can have invulnerability. The one thing they can't have is flight. Because Kieran Gillen, he writes about it, and he's got an editorial in the back where he writes essays about his thinking of all this stuff too. And he thought flight would change tactics too much because you would never know where the superheroes were.
Yeah, flight would change everything.
Right, which is because you wouldn't be able to figure out that the superheroes are at this battlefield and they have to be there. They can't be 100 miles away in an instant. Yeah. That'd be too tricky because he's trying to think of real world sort of battle implications of superheroes. And they also need rest in that They can go for a while, but if they don't rest every so often, their own halo effect will tear them apart.
Yeah.
So but also only a certain amount of people can be these you have to make this like blue goo and give it to them. And you have to give it to them over a series of 3 months too.
Super goo.
Yeah, and if you give the super goo to a person who can't handle it, they just die. So they had to figure out a test to give people to see who would be able to be a superhero.
Candidate.
Right. And one of the funny things is Joseph Stalin, not funny, but horrifying. Joseph Stalin, because he was an ally, once the English got it, they gave the copies of the book to the Allies, and they were wondering if they should give it to the Soviets, but they did. Gave it to the Soviets, gave it to the U.S., and they were told, we have to come up with it, and the British, of course, weren't telling the Soviets everything. And they didn't want to tell them, the British, that they kind of developed a test. They're like, you're going to have to develop your own test for people. Meanwhile, Joseph Stalin had whole camps full of what he called traitors, people who fled before the Nazis. This is in real life.
Yeah.
He expected them to fight to the death against the Nazis. And if they didn't, they were traitors. So he had camps full of hundreds of thousands of people. And they told him, like, we forget this test. He's like, because it's only like 1 in 500 or something is susceptible. Everyone else will die if you give it to him. And he's like, 1 in 500? I've got, or I don't even, maybe even 1 in 5,000. Because he's like, I've got 500,000 people in those camps. Give it to all of them. That'll give me 400 super people. And so that's what they did. It's like he just killed everyone in the camps except for these 400 people. And it becomes all about using these superheroes tactically, and how can you use them tactically, and what can the British and the Americans are behind. They're like 6 months behind. What can they do? Because like the 3 battleships, we just have no defenses against. They're too strong, too powerful, and they can kill at a distance too. And then also they have what the Germans experiment. They had what they called tank men, where instead of giving them like a halo effect and some superpower, some strength, they gave them just strength, two containers of strength. So they became the tank men who would physically charge into the battle and destroy things. And they were stronger than the regular guys who had 1 halo effect and 1 superpower. And then there's one character in it who's just heartbreaking, who she's been in it all the time. One of the things the British wanted to do was figure out what happens, because they don't know what they're doing. No one knows what they're doing with this book. They wanted to figure out what happens when they give all 4 containers strength. So this one woman who was battleship class or whatever it was, they were going to give her, and she was just, this vivacious young woman, and over the months, and she just slowly turns into a monster. And then she's got such strength and such bulk, she can't move that well. And then she finally goes into battle, and she's got no distance weapons, but she's strong. But the other battleships were able to concentrate their halo effect on her knees and cripple her. And she's still alive, but she can't even walk anymore, because one of the problems with these superpowers is you can heal, but you heal wrong, and then you're so strong they can't fix you. We got nothing that can re-break a bone and fix it.
Ouch.
So her knees just healed up wrong because she can do that, but there's nothing we can do for her. So she's sort of this tragic character who goes throughout the story because she was an experiment gone wrong. They knew not to do that now once they did that with her. But it's a really interesting look at how superheroes would change the tactics of World War II.
Yeah, towards the end of World War II is a really good time frame to set a lot of different stories. because you knew the Nazis were so desperate they would grasp upon anything.
Right.
That's been done with horror stories where the Nazis would try to develop soldiers as werewolves, for example. There's a lot of stories like that on the market. And it's a lot of storytelling potential there.
Yeah, I'll show some of the one of the themes of this was it happened so late in the war that it really isn't going to be able to lead the Germans to victory, but what can they get from it, kind of thing. So there's a lot of sort of fatalistic stuff in there. You want to see some inside? There's some inside. The art's generally pretty good. Let me see if I can get a. There's some cool action sequences. I think this might be the climax with that woman who's too big right there. That's her and her. And they'd come up with armor for these guys too that really didn't do a lot. Oh yeah, since I already spoiled it, that's them using their halo effect on both her knees, the other two battleships. And she just has no chance. It's a pretty sad scene. But there's also, this is 27 issues. It's Uber, it's called. Then there's Uber Invasion, which is volume 2, which has 17 issues so far and isn't finished. And Uber Invasion is the United States being invaded. So some of the superheroes get invade the U.S. Yeah, looks good. Yeah, one of my favorites of the last, 10 years has been that I missed out on the whole. And they have like 4 different covers each series. This is like what is this? What do they call this? This is the wraparound cover. Okay, so this is the wraparound cover. Whoops. And this is the woman, the German woman. Those little blue dots are her halo effect blowing up London. Yeah, they have to figure out how to get these superheroes somewhere, and how to get them somewhere, and how to get them out too. And here is this is the Blitzkrieg cover. They have like a regular cover, a wraparound cover, a Blitzkrieg cover, and a propaganda cover. That's the regular cover. So there's like 4 covers for every issue.
The propaganda covers. Buy the next issue.
It's supposed to look like either German, British, or American propaganda. I think it is.
Right. Speaking of, you was talking about art and stuff earlier. Some of the Soviet propaganda art is absolutely cool.
Oh yeah.
I was just reading that. And I love the Soviet propaganda art. Some of it's really cool.
Yeah.
And let me just check that this is true, because one of the things they did in this too. As you can see by the cover, they use the Iron Cross as a symbol of Germany rather than the swastika. I guess because they just didn't want swastikas all over there, and I can understand that.
Also in Germany, you cannot use a swastika.
Right. That's probably it too. So they went with the Iron Cross as the symbol.
Right.
So I thought that's one of those series I wish more people would read, because it's really good. It's good stuff.
Is it out in graphic novel form yet? Can I be an asshole?
Mm-hmm. It is. You can find it. You probably find it on Amazon, and I don't know how common the graphic novels are.
Or you can always check the local store.
All right. That Soviet art style is socialist realism. I remember learning
as opposed to photorealism.
Photorealism. We already went through that.
I was always a big fan of that. What's called like a posterized art style, like the public works posters that the U.S. did back in the 30s and 40s. I always liked that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Back when they put the artists to work. Yeah. Jackson Pollock worked for the Public Arts Project. I remember I read that in the early 90s, a biography of Jackson Pollock came out. And remember reading about him working for the WPA. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Then he spilled a can of paint and it was all over.
No, what was interesting about reading that Jackson Pollock book too was that during that time period, the 30s, the 20s, the 30s, all these artists were trying, because photography took over so much of art. I mean, photography really took over a lot of the roles art used to play in society. So there was modern art is a lot of searching.
I wonder how much of an influence Time magazine's covers had in that regard.
Good question. Yeah, but one of the things was that they would, and there was Jackson Pollock was a New York City guy, and World War II, of course, drove a lot of the European artists to New York City. So New York City became the center of the art scene, and so so Jackson Pollock, of course, was hanging out with a whole bunch of other artists and WPA guys, and every time they thought they were on to something new, every time they were like, I think this is it, I think I got it, they'd find out that Picasso did it 5 years earlier. And I always knew, Picasso, you learn all about Picasso in art school. So I always knew Picasso was, I always knew he was important, but I never saw like the story of Picasso told from like the other artist's point of view before. He was such a looming figure in the art world because he had done so much and gone in so many different directions. And every time they thought they found a direction to go in, they were like, oh, crap.
Damn it. He's there first.
Picasso got there. Just watched a documentary on North Korea. They showed artists doing beautiful propaganda posters, and apparently there was another dozen artists doing the same in a huge state building. Yeah. They get a lot. The other comic that I finished off, finally got the last issues I needed on, were Strangers in Paradise. This is issue 6. And I was just missing a handful of issues. I didn't start buying this regularly till issue like 20. And so I was missing, this is volume 2 also. So I got 6, 7, 13, 18, and 19. And now I have 1 through 80. You can reread them.
Wow, I didn't realize it went up to 80.
It went up to 80.
Because I think I'd started falling off that series probably in the issues 20s, 30s or so.
You know what's funny about this one? This was one of those books I always should have liked, because as an indie guy, this would be a book you'd describe to me, and I should like.
Right.
And I picked up an issue here or there. It never really grabbed me. I'm kind of like, finally, at issue 20, I'm like, I'm just putting it on my pull list. Yeah. Because I should like this comic, and I just want to read it for a while. I'm sure I'll like it eventually. I'll be able to see what it's about and grasp it. And sure enough, that's what happened. I was able to finally, because each issue is just such a small slice of their lives that go on and on. And
I just remember getting a certain point in the story where it got a little text heavy. And then I thought, I ordered something literally just yesterday that I've been bitching about for years. The Valerian hardcover that I was never able to find, number 6 of 7. I have the other 6. Finally, a copy of it came up last night, and within 2 minutes, I had bought it. I was like, all right, that because I'll never freaking find it again. So that's coming in the mail. So.
I'm not going to buy anything for the foreseeable future. Maybe if I can get a job in the next few months.
Yeah.
And then the plan is to start buying the Mercenary by Segredes, because it's getting reprinted here.
Okay.
Daisy
Line, did you get anything?
I have not gotten anything recently, but I am strongly considering going to our local shop tomorrow while we're out and about. And the
See
Uber.
what's available.
Well, the Uber sounds really good, and I mean anything that's been along the asshole lines.
You could
anything that's in a graphic novel.
Right.
You could take an Uber ride to the shop and pick up Uber.
I can.
I don't know if Uber will just be randomly lying in some shop. You might have to order it from the shop or from eBay. I mean, from Amazon.
That is true. You never know with our local shop. They've got right.
Every
once in a while they come up with some weird stuff. But
right.
I also want to really, now that I mentioned it tonight, I want to pick up any. I don't know where all my Asterisk and Obelix books went, and that was those and Gru and Sarah. I keep wanting to call him Cerberus, but it's Cerberus, right? Or Cerberus?
No, it's Cerberus. It's not Cerberus. Cerberus is the dog at the gates of hell. And Dave Sim wanted to name Cerberus after, except he got it wrong.
There we go. And that's why I keep conflating them in my head. But
Cerberus and Cerberus.
Gru and Cerberus were the two. Those were the first comics that I ever read at age like 24, something like that. I was a chick. I was behind the times, but then I got into the right crowd, and
I have a complete run of Gru, and it took a long time to put it together.
Yeah, one of my prized possessions is a little drawing of Gru and Roberto that Sergio did for me when I was working in the bullpen, and he came in one day.
Nice.
And I was like,
Sergio tells the best stories.
Oh, I know. I only remember him from the one time that he came in, but he was just the nicest guy.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy to talk to.
Yep.
I remember the day that I think Ed Murr was just telling this story recently about the kid stole the Gru page from him.
Yeah, the kid.
Wow.
Every now and then, well, at Marvel in the 90s, there was often tours that went through. Every now and then, so a friend would say, "Oh, I know this kid who's a big Marvel Comics fan. Can you get him a tour?"
Right.
And Ed, our friend Ed, was always accommodating, nice guy. So he for a friend of ours, he said, "Sure, send him on up." He's a 10, 12-year-old kid. So he comes over. Ed's giving him a tour, shows him his desk. He's showing him what he's working on, and on his desk he had a splash page to Gru that he was doing some paste ups on.
Right.
And he showed the kid the page. And the kid put it in his bag. And Ed didn't notice. So, tour's over. Kid goes home. Ed looks on his desk to finish it. And he's like, I can't find the page. He's like, where's the page? I remember he looked up at me and went, do you think that kid stole the page? Marcus McLaurin was the editor of Gru then. He comes out, he's like, Marcus, I don't know where the page went. Ed had to call our friend. She had to call her friend to track him down, send the kid back in with the page.
So they got it back.
You got it back. So whatever issue of Gru that was had a well-traveled splash page on it around 1990, 1991.
Mark Evanier, it'd been funny if the kid, well, not funny, but it'd been ironic if the kid would have stole the page and never came back. And then Mark Evanier would have had a great story. Well, Sergio just do another one just like it in 2 minutes.
Yeah. The kid went, oh, I thought you gave that to me.
Sure.
Wow.
Good cover, kid.
Yeah. Good cover.
Mm-hmm. You got 1 million pages in the bullpen. I thought they were free. I thought you wouldn't miss one.
Yeah. People steal these pages all the time, don't they?
When I think about the volume of paper that was in that room, just that room alone.
I always think I wish I had saved more stuff, but if I had, I would have been overwhelmed with stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that ballsy kid. Yeah. That thieving kid.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I wish I would have saved was I just happened to be there one day when Paul Becton, who worked in the Marvel offices as a colorist and also did a lot of freelance coloring at Marvel, back when you did freelance coloring on Xeroxes of the art and notated it. And he just got a stack that big of his coloring back from art returns. Because they did that, they returned art, so they returned that. And he just took them and put them in the garbage. This is like 1992.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing he could do with them. No, at that time, there was no one collecting original coloring like that. There was nowhere to sell them. There was no eBay. People weren't selling them and I was just like, it broke my heart to see him do that. And I'm like, but it's like, I should have taken them out. To this day, I wish I had taken them out of the garbage. But
Yeah.
They should have given them to the kids on the tour.
Yeah, who knows? I don't think Paul liked the kids on the tour to come over. He was at Marvel. Whenever there was a tour going on at Marvel, at least half of the place would empty out because they just didn't want to deal with the tour.
Yeah, that was definitely. I always dreaded Spider-Man coming over with the group of kids to talk to me because I was like, I don't know what to tell them. What do you want me to say? I imitate handwriting. I glue balloons to a page.
It's amazing how many people who work at Marvel don't know how to talk to children.
What you should have done is said, for $1, I'll tell you what's happening in the next issue.
Yeah, it's more. I was eventually great at talking to kids. Turned out I had a knack for it, but when I worked at Marvel, I was just kind of like, no.
Yeah, I was okay with the tours. Spider-Man used to take him over to me all the time. There'd be relief on his eye, and you'd be like, oh. Because he'd come they'd have an actor dressed up as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And he'd be leading a dozen kids down to the bullpen, and everybody just go whoosh. He'd be like, oh.
Now, when they did that for the tours, did they get like the cheapest person they could find, or would they get like one of the guys that would actually go out and make public appearances?
I have no idea how they hired.
I don't know, but we had a really good Spider-Man for a long time.
Yeah,
he was a cool guy, and I just remember one tour. Spencer Lamb was one of the. I guess he was an assistant editor at the time, and he kept a snake in the office. He bought a baby. I think it was a boa constrictor, and so M was only like maybe two feet long at the time, and so she was just a baby, and I used to hold her on my hand because she liked hanging out underneath the lamp that was over my desk because it was nice and warm, and I did it on a Friday by mistake. So the result was that I was sitting there with my hand like this, with a snake entwined around my fingers, fast asleep. And the tour came through, and I was the first desk that they would see. I was right beside the kitchenette, and they walked in, and one of the moms just went, ah!
Yeah.
And I was informed that I should not be holding a live snake in my hand when the tours come through. And I was like,
a dead snake would be fine.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
So
let's see what's new in the comic shop news. I have no idea what this book is, The Magnificent Seven, but it has something to do with D'Artagnan. So it's like a Three Musketeers sequel. Hold on. John Wick with swords? That's how writer Evan Doherty pitches Seven Swords, #1, with art by Ricardo Latina. Doesn't interest me in the least. Look, Sleepy Reader's here. Hello there. And is that the Ditko effect? I got that up too late, so I don't get the reference. And I was amazed that Baby Teeth is at number 18. You so rarely see like indie books or any books up at issue 18 these days. I was like, wow, that one's still going.
I was
And it's
thinking
issue
that
18
title,
from
you've
Amazon?
only got 14 more issues to go, and then you've got a complete set of adult teeth. So.
Baby
if
teeth.
it ended at 32. Yeah.
Well, for baby teeth, it would have to end at like 20, right? If it was adult teeth, it would end at 32.
Well, some people's baby teeth come in more than once, so it can vary.
Baby teeth freak me out. They're so little.
That's because they're in babies.
Gives you
Have you guys ever seen that X-ray of baby teeth of like a kid's jaw and then all the little baby teeth, but then there are like the giant teeth coming in, and it's like
they have a little like an ammo bin underneath where all the replacements are coming up. If you've ever seen one for a shark, it's ridiculous.
Yes, I've seen. Yeah, it's because sharks they're losing teeth all the time. They got like those 3 rows of teeth, and they're very bitey.
Yes.
There was one thing in here I have to. Oh, there it is. And this one, there's a lot of indie stuff in here. And they give you what's the scoop and then why should you care. And the one for Geiger #1 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. What's the scoop? They just tell you what it's about. It's a post-apocalyptic thing. But here's the part that cracked me up. And why should you care? The creative masterminds of Doomsday Clock, the most compelling DC series of the century so far, reunite for their first ever creator-owned image series. Who thinks Doomsday Clock is the most compelling DC series of the century so far?
That guy.
Nobody, including that guy.
Nobody. I'm like, was that facetious? I don't know. That can only be done in jest, right? He can't believe that.
Yeah, nobody refers to a comic book they liked as compelling.
Yeah. No, that's talk about the comic nobody cared about. Evan Doherty is a screenwriter. Okay. One of those screenwriters. I was freaked out by baby teeth and never even looked inside.
Thank you.
But the Marvels #1, I'm actually kind of interested in, but I don't know if I'd ever buy it. It's a new Kurt Busiek series. That's why I'm interested in it. Where he's just basically going anywhere he wants to in the Marvel universe with whatever characters he wants to.
Kurt Busiek was like one of the very few writers left that could get me interested in reading anything to do with superheroes again.
Yeah, that's why I'm interested. But the artist is somebody named Yildiray Sinar.
Wasn't he a Star Wars villain?
Well, that's just gonna be like a
He used to draw the JSA back when they were trying to do not New 52 but after New 52, which one of those?
Oh, that compelling series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. Sleepy Reader has like the most comic shops within walking distance from him of anybody on YouTube, and none of them carry comic shop news. That's weird. Because the shops have to actually pay for this. They buy it, for I don't know, $0.25 a piece or something.
Yeah, I think back in
the none of them
day,
did.
you could get it at the shop I went to, but you had to pre-order it.
Yeah. They just have them out at my local comic shop. So
right. Yeah, I remember comic shop news. God, that's been around forever.
Mm-hmm. I read some superhero stuff, just not Marvel and DC superhero stuff.
Right.
They're in like Uber is a superhero book, but not really.
Well, it's like it's funny. Sometimes people use the term superhero, and it's like some books they're like on the fringe of that.
Right. Like I don't. I mean, I don't know. Uber has super powered people, but I guess they're heroes if they're fighting for your side.
Yeah.
But They're really weapons of war.
Like Lobster Johnson would be a good example of that. I mean, technically, he's like a pulp hero from the 30s or 40s, but I don't think of him as a quote-unquote a superhero. So.
I go with, I don't know where I heard this. Reading some article in Comics With, that a superhero is anyone who has an impossible skill set. So Batman is a superhero.
Yes. I
Because
would
he's got
say
an
that
impossible skill set.
I would say that when they started creating some of the Victorian era literary heroes, they're already superheroes. So Sherlock Holmes qualifies as a superhero. His detective powers are too much for
it's an
regular
impossible skill set.
Yeah. Tarzan is a superhero. He's a feral child who adapts to becoming a peer of the realm.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, comics also, a lot of superhero comics grew out of the pulp traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've heard it argued that the first superhero was Robin Hood.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a great argument. But,
would somebody like Beowulf be a superhero? Defeating monsters?
Well, in terms of what he was physically capable to do versus a normal human, I mean, if you look at it in an aspect, then technically yes.
Yeah.
But mythic heroes are, precursors to what we call superheroes now. So.
I think Ultra
Mega is the Minotaur.
If you go back that far, you could say that what's his name?
Utnapishtim.
Doc Savage definitely has an impossible skill set.
Absolutely. He's smarter and faster and stronger than everybody else.
Yeah.
Not to the same degree that Superman was.
Right. And I love it how all his sidekicks are experts in some field or another, but he's more expert than all of them. It's like, then why'd you get the expert?
Right.
Yeah, I went with the definition of superhero as anyone who has an impossible skill set. Mm-hmm. And Tarzan will fit that because he's got an impossible skill set. You can't swing from vines and travel.
Sure you can.
Batman's a superhero because he's got an impossible skill set. You can't be that good a fighter, a detective. That's what you have. You can't do it.
And you're rich too.
Yeah.
That's also a superpower.
Yeah.
Well, John Carter, when he's on Mars, has superpowers, right?
Right.
He's faster and stronger than everyone on Mars.
Well, they explain that away because it has a reduced gravity field compared to Earth, but yeah.
Yeah, it was the same with Superman. Before they started giving Superman extra powers, he could leap over tall buildings because the gravity on Earth was lower than on
Krypton.
Right. And Doc Savage had such an influence on everybody.
Especially Superman. I mean, when you consider Clark Kent, Clark comes from Clark Savage, which is Doc Savage. Kent comes from Kent Allard, which was the Shadow.
Ah, okay. Everything has its influence.
And the Fortress of Solitude was a direct lift from Doc Savage.
But yeah, even without powers, they're superheroes because they have powers.
But there was a article I read years ago about what was the first crime-fighting hero, and it was interesting because one guy had the opinion it was Robin Hood. Some other guy had the opinion it was Zora. I mean, it's you could argue these points if you're blue in the face, but it was interesting.
Mm-hmm. There's probably lots of them we don't know because they didn't get written down.
Sure. Mm-hmm. I was thinking, if you extend that back, you can go all the way back to, and I can't remember the guy's name now, is ancient Assyrian hero. Gilgamesh.
Oh, yeah. Gilgamesh?
Gilgamesh is probably the first superhero.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Certainly the first one that was written down.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Superhero.
It could have been the Fantastic Fury Freak Brothers, but just nobody wrote it down until Gilbert Shelton. Yeah. guys that discovered some magic mushroom back in the 500. Just couldn't write it down because they didn't have the tools.
Like sometimes I wonder whether to call Uber a superhero book or not.
It's
because
alternate reality science fiction.
Really?
Yeah, I'd consider that more an alternate history book.
Yeah, it's as much one the other.
And sci-fi, alternate history sci-fi.
Yeah,
maybe.
But there are superheroes in it. Yeah, the first detective story was Edgar Allan Poe. That's what everybody says.
It's modern detective.
It's Fat Freddy's cat. Poe Dameron. Like I'm free associating Poes. I've never even read any Poe Dameron comics. I must have just seen one on.
Actually, a couple of them are pretty decent.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was just watching two comic book hauls in a row. I forget who they. I think Mercenaut was one. Both of them had the same issue of Captain America with the first. Oh, it was the first appearance of Madcap or something, with the cover with Captain America with like all the different pieces on his. He's got like half a shield and half a Nomad costume and half. And I was like, how did that end up? I'm like, did this book suddenly get hot or something?
Oh, no.
Yeah, Uber definitely has superheroes in it. I'm just wondering if I describe it as a superhero book, just because I don't think you can give it to fans of superheroes.
It's not a traditional
fan of superheroes, and you're looking for a superhero book. I don't think you're looking for Uber. That's the only problem I have with calling it a superhero book.
Yeah. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, there's a long history of, late era World War II projects where the Nazis were experimenting with whatever you want to throw in the pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
it can fall into a few categories. So.
Yeah,
but superhero is definitely one of the categories because they're in there. But like I said, if someone's a fan of Spider-Man, I don't know if they're ever gonna. If you handed them Uber, they might be like, "What is this?"
Depends on the person.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's what they are. They're a mainstream Spider-Man fan,
right?
Yeah, can you imagine what happened to me the first time I saw martial law? It was actually quite interesting. I knew I had to read it.
I am the law.
But martial law was more than Watchmen, a proper critique of superheroes.
Yeah. Well, to me, Watchmen was an indie comic for people who had never read indie comics. That's when it came out in, what was that, 86?
Yep.
I had already been reading indie comics for 6 years, hard, So Watchmen, and I bought Watchmen, and it was okay. I enjoyed it, but much like I thought later Vertigo comics were indie comics for people who don't read indie comics. So that's what like Watchmen really wasn't a critique of superheroes. It's like indie comics had been doing that sort of thing with superheroes for a while,
right?
Deconstructing superheroes. Alan Moore just made it big time
at it than just about everybody else.
What was that? Who?
Alan Moore was just better at it than just
everybody else. He just big timed it.
Yeah.
An anti-superhero book is still a superhero. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to describe it. So many superhero comics have been critiques of superhero. That's true. I'm Flaming Carrot for the Win. There we go. There's an indie book that was deconstructing superheroes long before, and it was trendy. What indie comics? Flaming Carrot is one right there. I don't even know that I can't even think of what indie comics I'm thinking of right now. But Normal Man.
Boris the Bear was a superhero parody.
Right. When did Normal Man come out? That was a superhero parody.
3?
I have no idea.
83, 84. Yeah, that was a. But like, it's not that they were deconstructing them in the same way as the Watchmen, because, like I said, Alan Moore big timed it.
Yeah, and Alan Moore didn't play it for laughs, and most of the other guys did.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the other ones was really just parodies more than.
Yeah, and Alan Moore had Dave Gibbons.
Yeah,
that helps too.
And martial law. Martial law made it. Kevin O'Neill made it purposely ugly because Kevin O'Neill hates superheroes. And Pat Mills, coming from 2080, has that acute British sense of humor.
I can't remember them either, but that's because they weren't big time. I mean, that's what set Watchmen apart, and that's what made it mainstream. Is it was a people say it's a superhero critique. It's not. Watchmen is a love letter to superheroes. Watchmen is the most fawning over superhero book ever, but it just does it in a different way. It makes it palatable to mainstream superhero fans, where the humorous critiques didn't.
Right.
If Watchmen had came out and was a critique that used parody, no one would have liked it. But it's a critique that is worshipful of superheroes, so it's barely a critique, which is what makes it stand out. But
it's just a different angle on the whole thing.
Yeah, Super Duper Man back in Man Magazine.
That's why I say
I remember
martial
that.
law was biting. Martial law was a biting critique.
Martial law didn't make all the other ones didn't make superhero fans proud to be superhero fans.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference with Watchmen. Watchmen made you proud to be a superhero fan. Watchmen is the book that every superhero fan wants to give to normal people to say, see, our stuff is really adult too. It's really good.
But Watchmen and The Dark Knight, which came out at about the same time. Right. Held up as here's the two paragons, here's what comics can do.
That's why I say Watchmen is barely it's a deconstruction of superhero, and that it looks at superhero tropes and does them well, but it doesn't critique them. It doesn't say these superhero tropes are tropes and goofy, and it takes them to their nth degree, and it's
in martial law, when they create superheroes, they're used as weapons of war and propaganda tools.
Yeah. Right. You don't have to shame superhero fans to be a critique, but critiques usually have humor in them. When you look at like superhero tropes, you usually say, "Oh, this is kind of," when you take this superhero trope out of context and look at it, it's kind of goofy. And that's why people who don't read comics think superheroes are goofy. They see the tropes as goofy. And Alan Moore took all those tropes and made them as ungoofy as he could by putting sex and nudity in it, and other stuff. But he did it in such a way as to not make fun of those tropes, which is what normally happens. Especially since no one critiques superheroes like people who love comics and aren't doing superheroes.
Yeah, Sala had a quote that says, "Hell hath no fury like the uninvolved."
Yeah.
That comment that 62 Lefty Blues just made about he ordered Half Past Danger, that's actually a really good book.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read that.
If you're not into pulpy stories like World War II and dinosaurs, you're not going to like it. But if you are, it's fantastic.
Sex and nudity, not goofy. You heard it here first. There is nothing goofy in Watchmen. Except maybe that pirate story. Oh, that's just dreadful. It's not goofy.
The monster
story.
You're the only one I've ever known who likes that pirate story.
and the ship of the monster that Ozymandias creates.
Right.
because that thing is drawn like a vagina, a killing vagina.
You'll find nothing goofy in Watchmen, because as he purged superheroes of all their goofiness.
So are you saying is that where he got the killing joke from? Is like just an Alan Moore continuation of like killing, and then he fills in a blank.
The killing
hand,
joke.
Killing pencil joke. Yeah, that's good.
Why not a killing vagina?
Yeah. Who is it? Del Close.
There are horror movies about that.
That's where I first found out that way. What was the name of that comic? Del Close did it for DC in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
It was a anthology series. It was a real weird, obscure one. Oh God, I can't remember.
Yeah.
Was it published by DC?
Published by DC.
Was it beautiful stories for ugly children?
No, that was later.
Okay.
I still have it on my shelf. I cannot remember the name of it.
Yeah, I can't either, but I know what you're talking about.
He did one little 8-page story that mentioned that vaginas with teeth were a common nightmare fear.
Yeah, and there's actually a word that describes that phobia, and I can't remember what it is.
Vagina denta? Something like
that. Something like that.
Really? That's a common nightmare fear?
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before that comment. They were talking about it. And
I had never heard it either. It's okay.
Moore took seriously the common observation that superheroes would have to be severely psychologically disturbed people.
Mm.
Yeah, he took it a little too seriously for me.
But it's true.
He took everything seriously.
He's right, though.
Yeah. Just the mirror that you're going to put on a bright colored costume is that you want people to pay attention to you. So you're already on your way to psychopathy, even without the part where you have to get violent. Like when Night Owl and Silk Spectre are talking about one of a guy they beat up once that he wanted to get spanked by superheroes, and Night Owl will say, spank me, and he kept saying, no, and he tried to walk away, and Silk Spectre, what happened to him? Rorschach threw him off a building, and then they start laughing.
The problem I've always had with the common observation that superheroes have to be severely psychologically disturbed people is that if superheroes existed in the real world, they wouldn't be dressed up in bright costumes and fighting crime.
Yeah, I've always said that about vampires. Like, if you were actually a vampire, why would you walk around in Victorian clothing looking like one? It's the same thing with superheroes.
The people we have closest to superheroes are all in the military, and that's what they do. You know, if we had superheroes, they'd be Uber more than they'd be Watchmen.
Yep. Not to mention when you're a superhero, there are only two kinds of people who love you and people who hate you. Mm-hmm. So there wouldn't be anybody walking around going, oh, yeah, Spider-Man.
Whatever.
Yeah, there's that guy. There's that Iron Man guy again. Move, trying to get my bagel.
Which is why I've always had a problem with, people doing realistic takes on superheroes. It's always kind of left me cold because I'm like, I don't know how realistic the whole premise isn't realistic. So doing a realistic take on an outlandish premise can be a little weird.
If we wanted realism, we wouldn't be reading
superheroes. Which is one of the reasons I've never liked Watchmen much, as well as it's a beautifully crafted comic. I mean, I'm not telling you it's bad in any way. I just find very little of value in it myself because I've never had taken much time. I never thought it was a good thought. What if superheroes were realistic?
Well, Moore was also really good at using storytelling techniques in comics that would not translate over well to other mediums.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He and Dave Gibbons. Dave Gibbons is a master of that too. It's just like That's why I said Watchmen is one of the best crafted comics ever, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a masterwork of craft. I just have very little interest in the subject, but that's life.
Right.
My dogs never go to sleep.
The physical limitations of man's imagination is the container known as the body. The mind goes on.
Well, the question is, what if you're stupid? How far on does your mind go?
Yeah. Scott's got a great point, and I'm not sure which point it was.
I don't know either, unless it was Alan.
We've said so many things.
Storytelling. I would assume it's for Alan Moore's storytelling techniques.
Oh, okay. Yeah, storytelling. Right. About him doing things in comics that you can't do in other stuff.
And Will Eisner was a good example of that, too.
Oh, yeah. Will Eisner. He could tell a story you couldn't tell. Bernie Krigstein.
No, I don't know a lot about Bernie. I mean, I know who he is and his impact, but I haven't read a lot of his work.
There isn't a lot of Bernie Krigstein to read.
Right.
He bailed from comics in the late 50s. He did some nice stuff at EC, but he did some stuff at Atlas too.
You like how every person that's into comics will have holes in their knowledge about a certain subject or a certain creator. For me, Bernie Krigstein is one of those guys. It's like, I know who he is, but I should know more about him.
Right. I know Bernie Krigstein's work because of our friend Ed Murr. Sometime around 1990, when Ed and I first started working at Marvel, John Romita told Ed that that Ed's work reminded him of Bernie Krigstein, so he should look it up. So Ed went out and found every Bernie Krigstein thing he could, of course. Some reason I've always loved Moore's angle on superheroes, starting with when I read the first issue of Warrior. I'm not saying I don't like Moore's angles on superheroes. I'm just saying I don't like it on Watchmen. I loved the last issue he did of Superman. Oh, that's great stuff.
Well, whatever happened to Man of Tomorrow?
Yeah, whatever. The one he did with the annual he did with Mongol and Dave Gibbons drew. Oh, that's good stuff.
There's one that he did for the ABC line, and it's one of the ones that ties into Tom Strong. I can't remember the exact title of the book. It's like Tales of Tomorrow or something like that. But he did a story that Mike Kaluta illustrated. It was all images of a futuristic city, and it's like, I want him to do that book like forever, because I would read the hell out of that. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah, Bernie Krigstein, I think, went on to be an illustrator. Matter of fact, Bernie Krigstein's daughter worked at Marvel. She was one of the people upstairs. And I think it was sometime in after Bernie died. I don't know what year he died, but it was sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. They had an open studio. He had a studio in Manhattan that I know Ed went to and bought a piece at eventually. Because as they were settling his estate, they were having an open studio where you could buy his artwork.
Right.
So Ed went down there and bought a piece of his. And it was Bernie Krigstein, his what was the name of that one?
Oh, the story that he did?
Yeah, the EC Comics one that just sold for $500,000.
I can't remember the title of it.
Was it The Final Solution?
I believe so.
It was an 8-page story Bernie Krigstein did.
That'll drive me crazy. Don't remember what it is.
Impact, I think it was. And I didn't realize, it's a famous comic book story, only 8 pages, but it's about takes place on the New York City subways,
mm-hmm.
and it's a man panicking and running. And he eventually has a heart attack and dies.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole story was and it was because the guy in the subway was a commandant of one of the master race. That's it. Sleepy's got it.
It's master race.
The master race. It's the only Krigstein story I've ever read. There are others, but that's like his masterworks that he did just before he left comics too. That's one of like the EC New Direction books. And it turns out this guy was panicking. He thought he saw someone over there who he knew he was a danger to, and eventually the guy like falls down and dies. And you find out he was a commandant of one of the death camps in Nazi. He was a Nazi commander, and the guy who he saw on the subway was one of the Jews who was in his camp.
Right.
And it's one of the. They said, I didn't realize when it sold. They said it was one of the first pop culture things to deal with the Holocaust. And it was like, because, the Holocaust didn't show up in books and TV and stuff like, and movies. So that's one of the interesting things of it. But it was such a well done comic too. Like once again, Bernie Krigstein did all sorts of things you can only do in comics. With time and the train coming and the man running, the master, and I think it was, where did it sold to like a Holocaust museum in Europe somewhere. I forget which, maybe Denmark. I can't remember. But yeah, sold for a lot of money.
What year was that?
I think 56.
Oh.
I may be off by a year or two, but that number jumps into my head.
April 1955.
55.
Wow. First came out.
Okay. In a comic book. Impact, right? Tales designed to have an impact.
Yeah, it was Impact. Yeah, that's what it was.
Tomorrow Stories? That was it, Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the
That's the one I was talking about a little bit earlier, right?
Okay.
He was just writing this series of little short stories. It's mostly text, but then Mike Kaluta did the illustrations of it. It's like, I want to go visit that city. It just looks cool.
Was that the story that won an Eisner?
I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Oh, I think I just was looking. That was like I think the one that won an Eisner in like 86 or something like that. I have it in Fantagraphics Best Comics of the Decade. I forget where I first read it, but I know I have it in there, which was a trade paperback that came out. I think it came out like 88 before the decade was even over. And it was Will Eisner, Alan Moore, and was it Don Simpson who drew it? I can't remember who drew it. I'll have to go look at it. But it was a story. It was sort of like Alan Moore critiquing himself. It took place in this city of all sort of these old time superheroes who are like hanging out in a bar and talking, and they're talking about how one by one they're being replaced, and they're being replaced by dark, grittier versions of themselves. And it was Alan Moore's commentary on how comics were getting darker in the 80s. And, he was part of it, of course, too. There was a lot of self-critique in that.
Right.
And by the end, they like walk out to the edge of the city where there's this fence, and they could see this shadow moving closer to their city. And I don't know if that's the story Paolo's talking about, but I remember.
No, the one Scott said about from Tomorrow Stories.
Oh, no, that one was done in the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere through there.
Yeah. What is the name of that? I'm going to have to walk back on my shelf and see if it's there.
Going into the secret cave of comics.
The Fortress of Solitude.
Seriously, have you guys ever been in the studio there?
Which?
In Jared's studio?
No.
Oh, yeah,
this is the book it's in.
Oh,
the best comics of the decade. And it's by, let me see. Oh, it is Donald Simpson. Alan Moore and Donald Simpson. It's called In Pictopia.
Oh, that's Pictopia was also serialized in one of the Fantagraphics comics too.
Yeah, I think so. Let me see if it says where it's from.
I think it was the Anything Goes series.
Pictopia.
Could be wrong.
That doesn't say where it's from. Yeah, that may have been where I read it first because I got Anything Goes. Yeah, now that you mention it, I think but it's Donald Simpson. Okay, I'm surprised I got that right.
Yeah, because I know him from Megaton Man.
Right.
And he also did a lot of Arrow comics for Fantagraphics under a pen name.
Oh, that's right. I never got any of those Arrows comics. I
didn't either. And it's Gilbert. Funny that, Fantagraphics always in Comics Journal held themselves to this high standard of being a publisher, and then they turn around and publish the Arrow stuff. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, I think the only thing I ever picked up was some Beto Hernandez stuff that was pretty good. But the other stuff I saw was just kind of smut.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of more interested in it than I was 30 years ago. I don't know why.
Smut.
Smut.
Is it ever not interesting?
Well, comic book smut isn't always that interesting.
Oh, that's true. There was some
only in Europe.
There was really
only in Europe.
Yeah. When I worked at Forbidden Planet, we had some really good smut comics in there, but it was all imported from Europe.
Yeah.
And God, I wish I could remember the names of some, but it was always, we had the one rack of comics that was 18 and older.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we didn't care who was
right.
I
may have gotten some Milo Manara stuff from there.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of smut comics.
Yep.
You'd have Druna by Serpieri.
Yes. That was one of the ones in particular that I liked. I was like, oh, the art is beautiful. But I mean, so I as an artist, I was sitting there going, really good art? Smut. Smut. But I think I picked up a couple just because I thought they were pretty.
Not because it's smut, just because it's art. Yeah. Paolo can be proud of the smut from his continent.
Proud smut.
We read them for the articles.
Yeah. The dialogues are very good.
It's easy to say that because it's such a cliche. But the articles in Playboy were actually really good.
They were.
Well drawn, but smut.
There's nothing wrong with smut.
Nah, it's all right. But I just remember not being drawn to the Eros comics smut. It's just there was just not much there. Like I said, except for I remember buying one Beto Hernandez thing that was good. You had to give me some story with my smut comic.
That's a good point. It's I also remember all the Japanese ones really went off the rails. We all know how.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story. My college years, 1986, this is probably 1988. My roommate, Tom Brown, said his mother is going to Japan. Does he want? Can she pick me up something? I said,
oh no,
pick me up a Japanese comic. Not knowing at the time that the most popular Japanese comics at the time were sadomasochistic sex comics. So
hentai or just sadomasochistic?
Oh, this is before hentai. Hentai, I don't think was invented at this time. This was sadomasochistic sex comics specifically. People getting tied up and.
I'm just getting it straight in my head.
Right. So one day he walks in and slams down a comic in front of me. He goes, "Thanks a lot. You sent my mother into a smut shop." I went, what? Every single comic was smut except this one. So here's this one. And it was like this terrible kids comic or something. I was like, okay. Thanks a lot.
She'll give you the other 4 issues after she gets done reading them.
Yeah.
There was a time when one of the best-selling comics in France was Titeuf, and it's basically dick jokes made by a 12-year-old.
Which is basically American cartoons for kids nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, we need violence. What was that one? Axe Cop?
I remember
that was actually written by a 12-year-old.
Seeing ads for it. Yeah, it was like an 8-year-old was writing that or something.
Yeah, it started by a web comic. It was an 8-year-old. His brother was drawing, who was an adult, or at least much more grown up than him, was drawing the stuff he wrote, Axe Cop.
Artie.
Now, if I remember, there was lots of violence in that.
Mm-hmm. Also, dinosaurs coming out of nowhere and stuff like that.
I hate it when that happens.
Hey, Skydiving Frankenstein is a classic from Yummy Fur. Have you guys ever read that?
No.
Oh.
I remember those were big at SUNY Purchase. I forget who first got them, but I got them. They got passed around to everybody. But Chester Brown's Yummy Fur, the first, 9 issues a lot of them were original mini comics that he was reformatting into regular comic size. And a lot of them didn't have a continuing story. They were just like little vignettes of stuff, including The Man Who Couldn't Stop, who sat on a toilet to take a dump and then just couldn't stop, and filled up the toilet and filled up the room and filled up the house and filled up the but anyway, and then there was this continuing story. I think it was 2 kids going on these little adventures or whatever happening. And at one point, they get taken up on a spaceship, a UFO, aliens kidnap them on this spaceship. And out of nowhere comes skydiving Frankenstein with a parachute, skydives until the spaceship. And it's like, me rescue you bad aliens, take little kids, me rescue little kids. And skydives out of the UFO with the kids and then leaves.
I like it. That's awesome.
Skydiving Frankenstein.
Was it just a one shot?
Yeah, he was just in a few pages. I think he may have made the cover too. I'll have to look. I haven't seen that in a while.
That's funny.
But we used to imitate skydiving Frankenstein all the time. Look, oh no, it's skydiving. Leave little kids alone. But that's how Yummy Fur first became popular, just with those weird non sequitur humor.
It's like when The Tick first came out. I got on it fairly early on.
Yep.
And then when the animated series came out years later, everybody was amazed. Like, you already know about The Tick? I'm like, yeah, I've been reading it for years.
Yeah. If you can track down, I think they put it out in a collected edition called Ed the Happy Clown. That if you ever want to track down that, it's like the weirdest. That's the weirdest of the Chester Brown stuff that made him, I guess, popular. Is that? I mean, can you really describe Chester Brown as popular? He was popular with us at
He's popular with a certain audience.
That was a story now, anyways. Yeah. Ed the Happy Clown. That's a good one to track down. All right. Well, we've been going for 2.5 hours. We can probably wind up now. Anybody have any final thoughts?
I don't think so. Only one, it is short, is that way back at the beginning we were talking about sound effects. Like you mentioned something about that. And it just reminded me of, this is totally stupid, nobody's going to laugh, but I remember when I was lettering a book, and there was you had to letter from a script, and and I couldn't figure out why they wanted me to write bathroom in huge letters across.
That's bathroom.
Right. And it wasn't until I actually looked at the page that I realized that there was an explosion going on, and it was bathroom. But I remember
it's amazing
looking
they use bathroom for that.
And I looked around the bullpen, and I'm like, why do they want me to write bathroom wicked big?
See, they needed to get Don Martin to do everybody's sound effects.
Right. Yeah. It's but anyway, that was my final thought, was just, bathroom.
I read Chet's paying for it. It was interesting.
There was a story in Epic Illustrated where these two monsters were having a battle, And I remember one of the ones just grabs one of the letters from the page, like a big letter T, and just uses it as a weapon against the other one and kills him with it. That's awesome.
That is really cool.
Yeah, he just grabbed whack. Yeah.
Any last words, Paolo?
Yeah. I gotta go to sleep now.
Yeah, it's late in Portugal. All right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say goodbye to our live audience.
Goodbye, live
guys
audience.
all have a good week out there. Bye, live audience.
Later.
Ta-ta.